Okay, so we're officially recording. Before we get started, I'm just going to go ahead and mention that we're going to be abiding by Akri's code of conduct in this meeting. We're also going to be recording this, so if you don't consent, please do hop off. This will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube on the Deus Labs YouTube channel. Yep, thanks Kate for posting the meeting notes right there. Let's go ahead and open that up. And I think the first thing is talking about the release. Let me share my screen real quick. Let me know if everyone can see my screen.
We saw it and then
it went away.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the meeting notes? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can talk about the release first things first as an announcement. Akri had our first release in I think since February. So thanks everyone. Great job on getting everything in. And I think one of the big features that we shipped was we were first off, like we were more compliant with like the newer Kubernetes versions. We were able to use containerd instead of Docker shim, which was really, really good. We're able to like remove that like underlying dependency. And then I think we also added like changes for the Helm secrets and using like the config map. So we could have like a YAML file instead of listing everything in like an environment variable or something like that. So those are just like some of the highlights, but we did like a quick test and everything did pass. We also ran through some of like the OPCOA and ONVIF. So yeah, thanks everyone. Congrats. Did anyone have any questions about that? Or should we move on? Cool. All right, we can move on. Kate and Eugene, would you like to talk about KubeCon?
Sure, I'll let Eugene kick it off and I can follow up.
Yeah, so me and another coworker, Francisco, we went to KubeCon. It was my first KubeCon ever, and that was really exciting. I think the in-person attendance was quite a bit larger. Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it was really good to see a lot of faces. I attended WASM Day, which talked a bunch about new technologies in WASM, and then I also attended Azure Day, and yeah, I attended Kate's talks. You know, one was on Akri, and I actually think it would be really useful for us to talk about that session if we can. And yeah.
Yeah, I think the conference, obviously we're coming back from COVID, so there were more people than we've seen in, for example, KubeCon North America. So that was really nice to see more people there. On the Akri side, it was kind of exciting. Last year we had to while we had our own booth, we also had to print our own stickers. And this year we were like a part of the sticker wall, which was kind of exciting to me. And really great name choice because we're always the first in the alphabet. So it's really always easy to find us. Even like if you go to the CNCF landscape, Akri is the first in the upper left corner. So that's kind of an exciting side effect of the name we chose. And also on the Akri side, so SUSE has been kind of involved with Akri from the start. I think a year ago, we were part of their SUSECon Edge Day keynote where they like openly promised they committed to using Akri in their edge solutions. And it was really cool. At their booth, they had a demo with a robot that you could play rock, paper, scissors against. And it was doing inferencing via cameras that Akri was discovering and deploying pods to use. So I thought that was really exciting to see. And I chatted a little bit with the SUSE folks and they're still excited to be engaged. So I think one thing we can talk about is how to better advertise these events. I think we have been good in the past about sending out tweets and reminders far in advance and like reaching out to individuals about agenda items. And I think trying to get more of the SUSE community involved would be a great to do. So we can talk about that also later. And then on the talk side of things, I did a talk with some folks from Intel who are really, really diving deep into what resources mean for Kubernetes from every end of it. So time shared resources that are hardware, all the way to like dynamic resources that can come and go. And while with Akri, we took the approach of building a Kubernetes operator, which is a controller in CRD, where the CRD gives desired state and the controller reconciles that. The alternative is to add functionality to Kubernetes itself. And Intel is doing a lot of work there, and they've been really patient about it. When we started Akri, we'd heard about this container device interface working group or container orchestrated devices working group that fell under runtime. And it's been interesting to see the progress they've had in the past 3 years. And it's kind of culminated in this work that was another part of the talk. And I think what's interesting about it is it's proposing an alternative to the device plugin interface. So in the talk, we basically walked through, I guess I don't know, I can go ahead and talk through some of the details of that now, or maybe we can pause. And I know Edric was also at KubeCon, so maybe Edric, do you want to give some of your takeaways from KubeCon?
Sure. Yeah. So, Kate, like you said, it was super exciting that we made on the sticker wall. I guess I don't even know how that choice was made. I wonder if they just took all the sandbox projects and had stickers for them. But I guess the sticker wall was pretty large this year. But it was pretty exciting being there on the first one. I also got a chance to talk to the Ranch River folks about the demo. It's super cool. So, Kate, I don't know if you know this, but so they not only wrote a discovery handler for the camera, but they also wrote it for the HDMI screen that they had at the booth. So you could pull out the HDMI cord and plug it into a different machine, and it will basically like put up the same display, um, which was super exciting to see.
That's interesting. And I wonder if we've had an issue up on Akri about changing the way that our UDEV discovery handler works. And I think it was related to this.
Yes.
So that gives us a bump on changing that.
Yeah, I talked to Andrew Gracie about this because I think he's the one that implemented it. He kind of at a high level basically said that like our existing UDEV rules don't really work for HDMI devices, so he wrote he wrote his own thing to make it work. And I was gonna ask him whether or not he could upstream it back or contribute it back, but we didn't get that far, I suppose.
No, I think it's interesting. I think that says two things. One, that's great that it's easy enough to extend Akri on your own. So that's good to hear. It would be nice to track these use cases if it is a public repo to kind of shout out, or we do have Akri's blog still.
Oh yeah.
So this would be a really cool blog for Akri if anyone was interested in kind of connecting with Andrew and co-writing that. I think it would be really cool to talk through that. So I didn't know about the HDMI one. That makes sense. The existing issue I know with UDEV, which we might run into during triage, is that we're using dev nodes to identify devices when we should be using syspath. And that's because dev node maps to a syspath and syspath maps to a hardware interface. So say you plug in your USB camera, it may pop up as dev node like video /dev/video 0. And you may unplug it and plug it back in. The next time it may be /dev/video 1, despite it mapping to the same syspath both times. So we should do syspath. That way we can detect if the same device was plugged in to different ports or plugged in multiple times. I think it does map to the same port, but to make sure that it's plugged in, the same device is plugged in.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that should be a really simple fix, actually. If anyone's interested in picking that up, we could put the good first issue on that one. Any other things that you wanted to update, Edric?
Trying to think. No, I mean, you also gave a great talk with the Intel folks. I think if anybody hasn't watched that yet, it's worth watching. I think you and the engineer from Intel gave a really good dive into sort of what the landscape of dynamic resources is, what the status of the KEP is, and sort of moving forward, like how do we think about all of this and potentially consolidate? Because I think, from my perspective, like eventually, like once everything gets implemented, we really have to think of how like Akri intersects with all of that.
Yeah, and I think we can transition to talking about that if we would like. Do folks have any questions about KubeCon?
I have a very minor question, but are the recordings like recorded, or sorry, are the talks recorded? Are we going to be able to like view them publicly, or would we have to distribute them elsewhere? Are there any materials we can see? Things like that.
Yeah. So CNCF posts them to their YouTube channel. I'll drop a link here. All of the WASM Day ones are up. So if you're interested, and like Eugen was saying, kind of exploring that area, you can see those. I don't believe they posted the full conference ones. They put up the WASM Day ones really fast, and actually some of the videos got scrambled. So I think they're now taking a step back and slowing down, just because I was very surprised by it. I think it took them like 2 days to put out the WASM Day ones. So actually it was more like a full week, but still it was quite fast. Usually they wait 2 weeks to kind of incentivize going and paying for the conference. So yeah, I would guess a couple more weeks and then we'll see them out. But I'll put it in the Akri channel or ping y'all when it comes out so you can see it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
And then I think something that Eugen and I messaged about is like, what should Akri's engagement be at future KubeCons? Because we are a sandbox project, we get, and maybe this is something we can also put in a meeting note so we have it documented in a public space. Let me try and find the message. I don't know if you can find it, Eugen, with the links that I sent. Oh,
yeah. Do you want me to link them in the chat?
Yeah, I think I just found it as well. So I'll put this in the meeting notes. I'm supposed to be taking those. Oops. So if we want to, for future KubeCons, participate in a larger capacity, so with projects you can do virtual office hours, and in-person kiosk in the project pavilion. So those are things to keep in mind. It is a booth that you have to man for an extended period of time. So we would need people willing to do that. But this is just in case you were interested in what that process is like. I'd assume that for Amsterdam, that would be within the next couple months is when you need to apply for that. Yeah, so just wanted to share that out, and I'll make those notes cleaner. I can go ahead and share a little bit about dynamic resource allocation if people are interested. Do you mind passing the host off, Audie? Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, so this was the presentation. So I presented it with Alexander Konensky, and Patrick was also supposed to participate, but unfortunately he had COVID. Patrick and Alexander were working on the KEP for dynamic resource allocation. More specifically, Patrick was the champion for it. So wrote the whole KEP and the implementation. It is when you do a KEP, which is the Kubernetes enhancement proposal, it's given a size, and this was given extra large, if that gives you a sense of how big this is, size wise, like how much of an implementation it is. So it's you can kind of see it was given this XXL label. And so this got approved, and it took a long time. And that's the way the KEP process works. Let me go ahead and see. It was accepted in 1.25 and then updated, and the code could be merged anytime. And so if you're interested in kind of diving into this, contributing Kubernetes, this would be a good time to try out like reviewing. And this is the PR for that. Basically what it's doing is, just to kind of tell a story. We had the device plugin interface, which enabled us out of the box. Kubernetes only comes with compute resources, namely CPU and memory. Then people wanted to do more with Kubernetes. And so the idea of being able to create new Kubernetes resources on a node level came to be. And that was enabled through the device plugin interface. And so you can create a device plugin, deploy it to a node, and it essentially says, hey, kubelet, we now have this on this node. So then when you go and schedule your pod, it will then only be scheduled to the node that has that resource. This is exactly what we're doing with Akri. We're just having one agent create device plugins for everything. So everything we discover, we create a new device plugin for. So essentially, instead of having to make that custom device plugin for every device, we do it on your behalf. And we also do it in a way that manages sharing of devices. And that's through the Akri instance. So the Akri instance makes it so that this thing that was meant to be only node level can be cross node, because we have this one state management Akri instance that is kind of like a mutex. So only one agent can be writing to it at a time. And you're kind of reading it and seeing, okay, this device is or isn't available. And so that's captured in the instance here. You can see that 2 nodes can see it, and 2 nodes have reserved it out of 3, because when we created this configuration, we said the capacity was 3 in this example. And so we're limiting all the amount that this can be used. So then this works. This is great. The problem with this is that we're limited to, we're still fairly specific. So you can see, and in this talk, I really removed Akri's controller from the picture entirely. And which is something we hadn't done in the past with Akri talks. And I was doing that to kind of focus in on the underlying use case of Akri, which is exposing devices as Kubernetes resources. And so in this picture, you can see here, if you remove the controller from the picture, the way you use devices is really imperative. So you're saying, I need this device with this ID. You can't do something declarative like, I want 2 IP cameras. And I created a proposal for how we could do this. I don't know if it got merged. It might be merged under docs. Essentially, we would have one device plugin to represent all of a certain type of device. And so we could do this. This one we could do. The idea of parameterizing to say, I want the fast OPC-UA robot. Right now, the only way we could really do that is by creating a lot of configurations. So in your configuration, you could add filters for what you need, and then only that would be discovered. And then if you use the broker, you could deploy to it. But you can't do that in the pod spec. And so this was kind of leading up to, is there a way that a user of Kubernetes could be more descriptive in their pod spec, or more parameterizing in their pod spec? And the whole talk was like, this user experience is YAML, meaning a pod spec. And so that's where dynamic resource allocation comes in. What it does is we're used to, is this a good example? Okay, I like this example. Well, okay. So we're used to resources being only memory, or being, requests and limits. This is what we're used to. What this KEP adds is this claim section. So you can claim a device in your pod spec. And that's this more abstract way of saying what you need without it being this purely unitized way of doing requests. So the problem with the device plugin is you can only do pure units, is one of the problems. And so with this way, you can just say, I want my resource. That's all you need to know. And then when you say what this is very similar to volume claims, if you're familiar with how like storage is done with Kubernetes. And so then you can go in and it'll say, this is my claim for my resource. And this ultimately maps. And then you can give parameters, which could be a config map, for example, and it can map to a resource class and a driver. So this is mapping to a custom resource definition. So we could have, so you can basically, it's very similar to Akri, it's just in-house. So having a custom resource to represent a device that's pointed to from the pod spec itself, and then you have an underlying driver. And so if we were to switch to using dynamic resource allocation or have that be optional, we would essentially implement the DRA interface instead of the device plugin interface, and we would be a driver. So we would have an Akri driver, and then we would have custom resources, just as we do currently. And this would be, for example, like a configuration, but it would be a little split up, a little different. Yeah, so that was me rambling for a bit. Do people have any questions on this? I just wanted to kind of introduce it. The talk's much more eloquent. I haven't gotten to try out the implementation of this, but it's something to keep our eyes on. It might result in a better experience for folks. People, as we started this conversation off, are already using Akri, and you can use it. It's just something to keep in mind if we wanted to be a driver for DRA as well. A little Edric live coding, just removed the.
It's kind of crazy just watching you perfectly like tab everything and like still write like a proper YAML file in like a text box. But do we have I guess we already have an issue open on this, right?
I don't think we do. That's a good point. We should.
Okay. Yeah, I can probably go open that, or one of us. I don't know if you should open it because you have more context, or
sure. Yeah. I'll do that. Let's see.
But yeah, I think in the long run, probably good to track. Do we? I guess like what KEP is like now that it's been accepted, sort of what's the working model around that? Like, who does the implementation and who like codes on it? Are there like, do they have like working group meetings that also kind of like sync everybody up, or they just kind of everybody just kind of does it offline and just GitHubs everything?
So this one, I can't speak to all, but this one was led by a working group. So the Container Orchestrated Devices Working Group, which falls under Runtime. And so they're under Signode, like their Slack is Signode. And so they have a basically subgroup within Slack, which I didn't even know you could do, called Dev DRA. And essentially they communicate on Slack tagging Dev DRA whenever they want. And their working group meetings have been devoted to DRA over the past year. So the working group is the meeting space. The Slack is Signode with their subgroup.
Got it. It's good to know.
But I don't think that's normal necessarily. I think having a big company like Intel pushing the implementation means that they were able to provide a lot of structure.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Any instinctual thoughts about that from anyone? I would love to hear, because like that's just what I was just exploring that. I'm curious what other people's thoughts are on device plugin interface versus DRA versus both.
I guess the interesting thing is that like as we kind of go along with this, I want to like my first thought is like, where does the overlap happen, right? Like given that Akri kind of conceptually fits in as a driver, are we just like a simplified interface for people to use devices, or I guess the general question is just how do we fit in from a mental model perspective, right? Like with the new DRA, could somebody technically do all of what Akri does without Akri? And sort of what is the value proposition, right?
Yeah, I see the value proposition being the exact same for device plugin. So for what we were doing for device plugin, we could essentially keep Akri's user experience the same, but be using DRA under the hood if you use the controller for deploying. The whole idea that I see is with device plugin, you had to create your own device plugins for every device. And the same goes with DRA. You have to create your own drivers. And they want it to be the same as device plugin where you have a driver per device. So with Akri, we would be this like mega driver, just as we are a mega device plugin. And with DRA, it's basically paving the way for you to do a more full-fledged management of shared devices, but that doesn't mean that people want to do that themselves. So it's making that a Kubernetes native, even more Kubernetes native of an experience, but you have to do that yourself. So essentially it calls DRA before even scheduling. So it's an earlier step. And so basically it would say like, hey, Akri, can I even schedule this? And Akri would be the source of truth. So I guess the point being of Akri being able to dynamically discover and create DRA plugins is the same as Akri being able to dynamically create device plugins. Got it. But it'll be interesting because it might lead to being able to do more with Akri. And I'm particularly curious about the whole parameters part of it. One thing that I remember hearing a lot is, what if I only want the IP camera by the front door? So needing to elevate the number of parameters we put on a device, I think will be important, which means needing to spec out the representation of a device in more detail rather than just discovery filtering. So currently we define a device by how we filter discovering it. We're going to need to expand that to defining a device by how we filter using it. So you might be able to discover a set of devices based on IP addresses and dev nodes, but you might want to use a device based on different principles, such as location or frame rate, or like you might want to only use the IP camera with a certain frame rate, but you don't care if that's the one you discover, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all I have on the DRA front. If people are interested in being involved in that effort, you're more than welcome to join the COD working groups. The presentation, which is linked in the notes, you can download the slides there. That has the information about the working group and the KEP and all that.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. I think a lot of us have just started to look at the slides and just like the DRA like implementation so far, like the KEP. So maybe next meeting we can talk more about it too then. We'll go through it a little bit more and just see it. But thanks for sharing that. That's actually really, really interesting.
Awesome.
Eugen, Edric, did you have anything else you wanted to add about KubeCon?
Nope, not really. It was a fun time. It was a really long conference. But you know, that's how KubeCons go.
Yeah, I've yet to go to one. We'll see maybe next time, but I've heard it was a lot of fun from everyone that's went. So yeah.
You know, that just means you have to put in some CFPs and submit some talks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually a really good transition. Yeah, is anyone interested in putting in a KEP? I'm happy to help review those. I've had luck getting them in. So if you need help writing one, happy to help with that.
You know, A CFP, right?
Sorry, CFP, not KEP. Oh my gosh, I wish.
I mean, if you want to put it at KP too.
Gosh, no, yeah, CFP. If anyone's interested in putting a CFP on something like Akri or anything, let me know. Or we can even have a mini brainstorm right now about what an Akri CFP could be.
Should I guess like kind of on that. At least we should. I'll go figure this out later, but I want to see like when the CFPs are gonna open for Amsterdam, because like I heard they always open so quickly right after like the previous.
Oh, I bet it's open.
Yeah, I think it's already opened.
Yeah.
Here, I'll look it up.
I guess we can just start a thread in the Akri Slack too, just kind of with ideas and if anybody's submitting anything.
So
The biggest thing is like I want to pull in I guess like the rancher folks do a lot of stuff with Akri. I just want to make sure that like we're kind of aware of it and like if they're gonna do anything. Yeah.
That's a really good point. So another big part about CFPs is if you're cross company collaboration, your chances of getting accepted are way higher. So if someone wants to do a presentation with a rancher, that would be a good opportunity. And the CFPs are due in like almost just 2 weeks. So that would need to be a fast process.
Yeah, I see November 18th as the day they're closing.
And I guess like another thing to keep in mind that like it also doesn't necessarily be like Akri centric, in the sense that like if you guys have any experience just like onboarding to like Akri or like any sort of like development patterns or just like any sort of learnings in the space, you can kind of use Akri as just like a basis and be like, hey, here are my learnings on like working with the CNCF project or yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be deep in the technicals. There's all these different sort of tracks and different directions you can go in with these talks.
I think a talk with AKS Lite plus Akri would be very cool. I don't know. So I'm a part of the IoT Edge working group, and when AKS Lite was announced, people were like chatting about it in the working group Slack. Like people are excited about it. So I think a talk like that would probably get accepted, but also probably be maybe regulated within Microsoft as wanting to be more emphasized in a certain way. I don't know if there's a certain tone that it needs to be, but I think that would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely keep that in mind. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty interesting to see. So hopefully we could see if we could do a CFP, and if we do, we'll reach out to you, Kate, to get that through, and you can help us review it if possible.
Cool. And then I think the other person who might be interesting to get involved is Leo, with just some of the kind of industrial IoT use cases. Am I thinking of the right person?
Yeah, I think Leo had that PR and was giving the talk last week, right? Yeah. I'll definitely reach out to Leo as well. I think that PR and that in general thing was like put as like keep alive, but I think he might have closed it just to like refactor it and like format things differently later. But I'll definitely reach out to Leo because I think that was a very interesting talk, and he had the whole proof of concept ready already. So
yeah, another thing that I'm really curious about is Akri plus Dapper, which is something I haven't looked into yet. I'm finally spinning up a cluster on my Mac, but I think that could be interesting as well. And I know some of the folks from Dapper who might be interested in talking there too. But for folks who aren't familiar, Dapper is kind of a way of making serverless code. So focusing on business logic, and you kind of plug in a Dapper sidecar that does something. So it can do so many different things so that it abstracts it away from you. So one thing I see Dapper being able to do potentially, have not used it at all, this may be so off, but essentially when we deploy an Akri broker, that would come with a Dapper sidecar that knows how to explicitly fetch the credential for the device that's been allocated to that broker. So instead of having to worry about credentials within Akri of like which gets which, Dapper could handle that by being attached to some key value store, and yeah, being able to manage that somehow.
I haven't looked at Dapper, but I am going to start looking at Dapper. That seems very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess there's a lot of fun options there. Yeah. And then I guess the other thing I want to say is like, there's conference driven development's a thing, right? So trying to get a feature out for a conference where you can present it. Is there a goal we have for Akri, a state we want to get it to? What are our thoughts around that?
I'm kind of curious, kind of in the long run, like if we want to go into the whole, I don't want to be too PME, but like I'm kind of curious, like like normally in all our respective companies that we work at, we kind of have like OKR planning or milestone planning or whatever, right? Kind of curious if like we could sort of in the process that we do here for Akri, kind of like have like the KubeCons kind of set in place as like sort of milestones that we hit, and we try to aim to put something cool out every conference. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
So sort of like with every KubeCon that comes up, have that as part of like an objective we hit, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like even though not expecting that we get a CFP and like accept it in a talk every time in, but like to have things teed up so that like we can always have the option to like we have enough of something to put out to put in a talk if we wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. It would have to be like I guess like a cross org effort essentially, since a lot of us are working on Akri across different like enterprises and things like that. But I would personally like that just because it would keep us in track such that if we wanted to showcase anything that we've been working on, it'd be ready by KubeCon. It's, I guess, similar to developing for a conference, but in a way, we're just keeping it in mind as we develop features and work on things. I don't know. Anyone else have any suggestions on that?
I think it would be nice to get everyone's vision clear on what their dreams are for Akri. So, and I think if an OKR is a subject matter for that, so that would be great. Like, what is it that people want most for Akri? Is it a more elevated controller that can do more precise scheduling? Or is it more discovery handlers? Or is it better discovery handlers? Is it a security, is it credential management and having that worked in? I think figuring that out would be helpful, or choosing one and going with it, something along those lines.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we do have a roadmap, which we have not updated. So, but I do think it would be nice to get another discovery handler out there. Oops, sorry. I do think it'd be nice to get another discovery handler out. We've had our same 3 discovery handlers for so long. So I do think that would be nice. Someone mentioned Matter in the chat, which is really interesting. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of really interesting cases there, but I also think we have a lot of bugs that we haven't taken any steps towards. So I think we could also have an OKR of like, what are the bugs we're going to have fixed by next KubeCon? I think that's something that I'm particularly interested in, given that there are several that are, I would say, like, not bugs necessarily, but they are kind of significant. And I think it would be great to get them done.
Yeah, I guess another thing on that note is just like I'm sure everybody already is, but a lot of the out of band conversations happen in our Kubernetes Slack channel. So everybody make sure to join that and keep up to date with things. And I think with any questions, feel free to just post directly into the Akri channel. It kind of helps anybody who's interested to pile on the conversation.
Yeah. I'm gonna put in the meeting notes, like, I'm curious, would it make sense to like be able to say these are some issues that we want done by next KubeCon, and kind of create champions for each one? Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty sane way to do it.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. The one thing I kind of have a question for is, are we aiming to present these at KubeCon? Is that like the goal in mind, or is the goal just have these done by the same time frame as KubeCon?
What was the first option there?
Like, would we be presenting these at KubeCon, or not presenting, but like, would we showcase this in any way at KubeCon?
Not unless we decide in the next 17 days which one to focus on. I don't think any of these are big features or the ones that I'm thinking of aren't necessarily big features. I think if we had a credential solution, that would be big enough to showcase at KubeCon. Maybe I'll play around with Dapper and Akri. I'm curious what can be done there. Yeah. But I don't know. Do any of them in particular to you look like we could maybe focus on?
I'm just going through right now, and I'm literally just looking at the issues right now that like we've had open, and the ones that you posted in the notes. So far, they seem like smaller pieces of like a giant puzzle in a way. So nothing yet that I could see that we could just put together as like a demo for KubeCon. But yeah, I think maybe with like the like authentication or like the credential manager story, and then maybe even like making the containers a little bit more lightweight and just having Akri run a little less heavily, we might be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, with the issue, I think those are both good. I think the main issue that I see is the first one that I put up, that I think it looks like, Joseph, you might have grabbed. So I'm curious how that's been going. But I think this one's one that when I'm presenting Akri, state that we can handle, but we can't. And that's concerning to me because I don't like presenting things that aren't quite accurate. But yeah, Joseph, have you had a chance to look at issue 492? I can share my screen.
Yeah, I just need a reminder on which one that is.
So essentially with Akri, if you make a resource request for 2 different cameras, so same discovery handler, but you're requesting 2 of them in your pod spec, we overwrite the same environment variable. So we have one environment variable where we write connectivity information to. So if you request 2 devices, it's just going to be the second one writes to it, instead of getting both.
Okay, yeah, I remember this. So I did look a little bit into it. I just haven't had a chance to actually go and like fix it yet. But I'll move that up on priority.
I think yeah, I think there's a lot of options here with it. Yeah, I think one of the ways would be to have an environment variable for each, along with, so that you would do like the equivalent of something like this to figure out which ones or maybe you have one environment variable that's called onVIF device ends, and that's like that maps to all the environment variables that you have. So it could be onVIF device ends equal onVIF device service URL 1, 2, 3, and it's just like comma delineated string or something. That's just like a naive first idea. But essentially, it seems kind of important to be able to put in connectivity information for more than one device within a pod. But yeah, feel free to ping me if you need help with it, or yeah, in any way. I think we can pair on it too if you'd like to do that. I'm happy to give that a go. I'm really into pairing these days, so yeah, just let me know.
Yep, we'll let you know.
I feel like I'm learning all these different like programming paradigms out of this dev call. It's like conference driven development and like pairing. It's like throwbacks to extreme coding.
Yeah, you want to throw in a new paradigm, Edric? Let's keep it going.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Cool. Well, yeah, let me know if you need help on that one at all. The other ones were, this demo should be revamped. We've talked about revamping our OPCUA demo so many times. And so many people have said they will do it and no one has done it, being community members. And so I think some of it's been Microsoft folks who've been trying it out, but it would just be so much better than our current one. Other one, this is Andrew Gracie's one. Like we talked about earlier, using syspath instead of devnode, reducing container sizes. Audie, you started on this. I'm not sure where we're at. I think
I should run this again, but I basically tried to replace the base image and then see if that worked a lot better. There were a lot of, I think Debian Buster Slim was one of the ones that I saw that like it was significantly smaller and might be able to do it. I think I'll try running the build and seeing if everything works again. If so, I can make that commit really quickly.
Cool. That's exciting. This one is a little bigger. I wonder if we want a new discovery handler for this, but essentially some devices have multiple nodes. So maybe the syspath will help with this, but essentially if you have a really fancy IP camera, it'll have multiple dev nodes, and we don't want those to be separate devices. Those are the same device. And then this is one where interesting. So when with our list, so list and watch is the communication stream between Akri's agent and the kubelet. Currently, we have basically this timeout that says every 60 seconds, remind the kubelet what's up. Instead, I must have reread the device plugin spec or something, but what it says is you only need to tell me what's up if it's changed. So we could essentially reduce the CPU usage of Akri by reducing the frequency of pinging kubelet, and instead only ping kubelet when we need to, instead of having this 60-second timeout. So just tell kubelet if things have changed, which would just make it a more efficient solution. So that's another one. Anyways, those are just some good ideas that I think those would all be great cleanups for next KubeCon. Yeah. Do we want to do issue triage?
Yeah, we have about, I think, 7 minutes before like the rough end of the call, but yeah, let's go ahead and do a quick issue triage then. I think
on the notes I was scheduled for that, but it looked like we only had 2 untriaged issues, and I think they were both about Rust seg faults. Let me share my screen.
And those might be also because I reopened them. So we have a stale bot that makes things go stale after a certain number of days. And whenever it gets closed because it's stale, but it was a rest sec issue, I reopen it. But unfortunately, that puts it back in the needing triage part.
Oh, I see. Does it delete all the labels that would have been assigned to it as well? It looks like they don't have any labels.
I don't think those had any ever.
So then I guess, do we just want to put those back into like investigating or backlog then?
Yeah, so I think investigating's fine for both of those.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move those over. And it doesn't look like there's any other things that need triage past those two.
Okay.
I did open one bug based on something that Roa sent me. Roa has this like auto update like dependency. Oh yeah, that was the one that Kate just marked right now.
Yeah, there's a bunch of issues. I'm just pulling them in. Okay, we should have like 7 issues now.
Yeah.
Is someone sharing their screen? Okay, I can share my screen if you want to vocalize, Joseph. I'm happy.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to share it, but it didn't let me. So
no worries. Looks like we have this one first.
Yeah, this was a bug that like Roa had mentioned to me. Roa has like an auto update dependency bot that runs, essentially just updating different parts of different versions for things that we use. But there was like an issue where like the Kubernetes 1.23 test on the first run would like run out of resources and fail, but when we respin it, it would work fine. I'm not sure if it's like an issue with just the action itself, or if it's like we just need to bump up like what we're running on. But I'll take a look at that and see what's going on for that one.
And you mentioned timeout. So are you thinking we just need to increase the time?
Maybe, yeah. It like consistently would fail, or not consistently would fail, but consistently on the second one would work. The first one would usually time out.
Cool. Yeah, we've had to bump the time in the past. So I would look at that for sure. Yeah, the end-to-end tests are finicky. We're doing a lot. So, and reusing and rerunning and reinstalling. So we're getting clean tests, but yeah, the failures are a bit much. So, cool. Do you want me to assign you then, Adi?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. I'll move that into investigating. It sounds like we're at that phase. I made this one, like I was mentioning, would be great to update the demo to use the PLC server instead of having people have to build their own .NET OPC servers. Yeah.
I think I was the one that asked for the demo, and I'm still working on it, but after I'm done, I can write a demo for it.
Awesome. Okay, that makes me so excited. I really don't like the .NET demo. That it's just so clunky. Okay, great. Can I assign you to it, Harrison?
Yeah. Do you just want like a write up page, or do you want like a video?
So ideally it would update the docs. It would update, basically we would replace this demo.
Okay, so we don't want this anymore, or do we just want to add another one on top of that?
I am voting to replace it.
Okay.
But we can totally not do that. Yeah, or I guess for starters, maybe just add a new one. That seems reasonable.
Okay, yeah, I can do that after I finish like getting like fully running it, because I'm still like playing around with it.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm wondering, you might need to make a new anomaly detection app or a new application of sorts, but I feel like you also could probably use the existing Python one, but maybe with a little bit of a modification. I'm not sure.
I haven't played around with it, but I will look into it more.
Okay, let me know if you need any help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Harrison, what's your GitHub? Or maybe if you can comment on it, sometimes it's hard to add people. But if you comment on it, then we can assign you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Oh, that for some reason, I don't know why this reminded me of that. We're officially owned by the CNCF. It took, for some reason, the CNCF wasn't accepting the invite for owning us, but now they do. So weirdly, this past week, Akri is officially owned by the CNCF, despite having joined as a sandbox project like a year ago. So just a side note, I don't know if y'all got that email too. Controller is crashing when Akri config is bad. What's happening here is essentially if you apply a malformed configuration, Akri will continue to crash over and over again. This person was saying that they would prefer that we don't error out in that situation. It was an active choice to error out. So I mentioned you can use the Akri webhook to prevent a bad configuration being applied, but I'm not sure what the best course of action is here because I think we need discussion around it because maybe that initial choice wasn't, yeah. Oh, I remember Brian being. I'll just ping Brian on that one. Okay. I'm gonna put that in investigating. Here's another one. Has anyone looked at this one? I guess I did. Okay, so this is basically saying our OPCUA broker is not great. We should switch to the PLC server. So this this is related to what we previously said. So we can just put that in investigating. This one, so for this one, they're trying to build the OpenCV Sharp container, which is literally notoriously large and hard to build. So I was a little confused why they were trying to do that. I don't know if they just ran make build or yeah, they just ran make and just try to build every container. So which isn't, I would say, the recommended development path, despite that being our make file. So I think maybe we should update the make file so that that isn't automatically run. But because I guess there are some people who just go to a repo and say make. So I don't know, should we anticipate that and change our make file so that by default you're not building all these containers? Or should we say that this is a developer error? And yeah, I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are.
I guess like just thinking off the top of my head, should we have a target in general just for like make alone, or should we say like very particularly you have to build specific components or like some sort of way to like route it to do like a make all, so that they know that like this isn't like your usual path, but we're gonna try to build everything anyway. Of those two, I'd say maybe just avoiding like documenting that, you know, a general make should not be the use case. We should try to build each component separately, might be the way around it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let
like,
me see what we say.
I think under building containers, they had they had all the targets.
I feel like it's pretty clear, honestly. Okay, I think what I'll say is bye, Edric. Well, also, I think they're trying to possibly, yeah, the platform or
Seems like they're doing a cross-platform build with Risk 5.
yeah, I don't know. It could be okay. Yeah, because Risk 5 is that ARM.
Yeah, that is ARM, but I don't know if it uses anything in particular to like do they differentiate themselves from general ARM? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think we'll move that to investigating. Allow for UDEV rules without a dev node. I might be able to find time to do this one. For now, we'll move it to backlog.
Okay. This one I opened, it was just GitHub Actions is getting rid of their like underlying Ubuntu image, and there's a bunch of references that need to change. I can take this if no one else wants to do this. Oh, I didn't see this. I didn't get an email
Yeah,
for
I
this.
was confused by this. Yeah, so someone wanted to work on this, and I was confused by the issue.
So I think our container image would be updated. So like we would get onto the latest image, but we're still pulling from the underlying, like we're hard coding on the like I think it was like Ubuntu, whatever the 18.04 name is. We're
In
pulling from like
our
most of those.
GitHub workflows. Hi, Harrison. In our GitHub workflows, or
I think so, yeah. It's been a while since.
I only see Ubuntu latest in all of them.
I think like when we were doing in like the comment I wrote for Kubernetes, like we look at like Kubernetes Xenial, which I think is like Ubuntu's 18.04 name. So things like that would have to change. It's like a very simple, like short fix, I think.
Okay. Do you mind replying to the issue to help that contributor get going on it? It sounded like they were interested in doing it.
Yeah, I'll do that right away. Thanks for letting me know.
Cool.
I'll put that maybe under investigating then, and then
Investigating.
We can go from there.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. I think that's all the issues then.
Great. Okay, cool. Thanks, Audie. And let me know if you need help with anything. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.